Ho ho hello! Thank you for stopping by. My name is Becky and this is Bex Reads, and today I am here to share with you my November wrap-up. In November, I read a total of 10 books, and to be quite honest with you, I cannot remember most of them. My brain was just elsewhere this month between going on vacation and then coming home and being sick. Some of the books that I read just left my brain. I did write down some notes about what the books were about, so I'm going to try my best to share with you what they were about and my star ratings on them, but keep your expectations low, okay? So my one 5-star book of the month was a reread for me, and that was What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. This is a book that I reread in anticipation of going to Egypt. It was the book that Gavin chose for us to buddy read and talk about while we were in Egypt. And I read this last year and I absolutely loved it. It is about a young woman named Inez whose parents are killed in Egypt, and she goes to Egypt to try and discover the truth behind what happened to them. But she is met with resistance not only by her uncle but by his associate Wit, and they have sort of a push and pull romance dynamic between them as she is learning the secrets of Egypt. So the first time I read this, I gave it 6 stars. It really hit me on a deep emotional level because I saw myself in Inez as this girl who was always wanting to visit Egypt and just never thought she would get the chance to. I really loved the history that was woven in here, and I loved the slight magical realism elements to it, and I liked the romantic dynamic between her and Wit. So this just had a lot going on for it that I absolutely loved. Now on reread, I still enjoyed it, but it just didn't hit me on that emotional level that it did the first time because I knew what was happening. So it's still very much a book that I enjoyed, I loved, I will reread it, and I highly recommend it if you are somebody who has always loved Egypt, if you love Egyptian history, if you like YA historical murder mysteries with a slight magical realism element. I think you will really enjoy this. I know several people on the trip who read this book. They didn't love it nearly as much as I did, but I just loved everything about this. I am always looking for books that are set in Egypt and talk about Egyptian history and things like that. So this was my favorite book of the month. So glad that I got to actually listen to the audiobook this time, so that was a different experience for me as well. But I highly recommend this, will always highly recommend this. And I got the audio free through Libby, so that was nice. And I am waiting for my Owl Crate edition to come of the next book so I can start it. But yes, this was my favorite. I had one 4.5 star, and that was my Black Hat Book Coven pick of the month, which was Bad Witch Burning by Jessica Lewis. In this, we are following a young woman named Cottrell who can speak to the dead, and her powers start changing where she is able to bring the dead back to life. And she uses this ability to get money so that she can take care of not only herself, but also her deadbeat mother. And it's the story of these ghosts who are telling her she needs to stop doing this, but when you are trying to provide for yourself and stay alive, you need money to do that. So how can she not do this when she needs the money to live? So I really enjoyed this story. It was a lot darker than I was expecting it to be for a YA story. It also touched on some darker elements within YA that I don't think you hear about a lot when it comes to hard-hitting YA stories. It was definitely a unique one that I necessarily wouldn't have picked up on my own volition, so I'm glad Laura recommended it as our book club pick. But I will link the live show discussion for this down in the description if you want to hear mine and the other Coven members' thoughts on it. I then had 2 4-star reads, the first being Wooing the Witch Queen by Stephanie Burgess. This was an audio arc that I got through NetGalley. This is about a queen named Saskia who is known to be very wicked after she took the throne from her uncle. But she is really a kind-hearted person, and she just wants to protect her country at all costs, especially against her neighbor in Kingdom, who is like her sworn enemy. And she really needs to focus on learning new spells and things like that to strengthen the magic in her kingdom so she could protect her people. But she doesn't have time to like catalog these spells or keep track of her library or anything like that. So she ends up hiring this mysterious dark wizard who shows up in her kingdom to pretty much be her librarian. But what she doesn't know is that this mysterious stranger is actually one of the royals from her neighboring kingdom who is her enemy. And so they spend time together, they start getting to know one another, and it is their romance. So this did take me a while to become invested in these characters in the story, and at a certain point it finally clicked for me. I really liked the cinnamon roll hero here. He is very much a very soft, shy character, but he does have these very protective tendencies for Saskia and her kingdom. I liked that Saskia was a very good-hearted witch, even though she is seen as evil. And I liked that they had good chemistry together. I really liked the way he went about wooing her. I just thought it was really, really sweet. This has a crow familiar in it, and it does have a library setting. I also really liked that this was a strangers to friends to lovers situation. I will say I listened to this on audio though, and I did not like the audio narration. I can't remember who the narrator was, but she is somebody who I don't like as a narrator. So that was a downfall of it. But besides the fact that it took me a while to get into this, I ended up really enjoying where it went. This is the first in a series though, but I don't think I will continue on with this series because I wasn't as invested in the side characters to know what their stories entail. But it was good for what it was. The other 4-star book I had was Witching You a Charmed Christmas by Jenna Colette. This I read as an ebook. It was a free ebook that I picked up on Amazon, and I did do a reading vlog for this, which I will link in the description if you want to hear what this book is about and my thoughts on it, but I'm not going to go into it because it'll just be rehashing it. And just to keep my vlogged books together, I also had a 3-star read in that same vlog called Mistletoe by Zariah L. Banks. Check that out if you want to hear what this book is and my thoughts on it as well. I then had 2 3.5-star reads, including The Girl Who Chased the Moon by Sarah Addison Allen. This I listened to an audiobook free through Hoopla, and this is a sort of contemporary with magical realism elements. It follows 2 different perspectives of a woman who is trying to settle her father's estate and try and run his business while she is in this small town. She is looking to leave this small town, but the connections that she has with one of the people who live in this small town is keeping her there longer than she expected, and we learn about her backstory and what went on with the man who she's like trying to avoid, but she ends up rekindling a romance with. The second perspective is that of a teenager who ends up coming to live with the grandfather that she never knew after her mother died, but when she comes back to this town, she learns that the people didn't like her mother and they have nothing good to say about her mother, and it's really contradicting what she knows of her mother because she knew her mother to be a very kind-hearted, giving person. So she is trying to uncover the secrets of why this town doesn't like her mother. I will be doing a recipe and review for this book in an upcoming video, so I'm not going to share all of my thoughts on what I liked and didn't like about it. So stay tuned for that video coming soon. But just know I gave it 3.5 stars. My other 3.5 star was They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. This is a book that I read because my friends and I are sending books around for everybody to annotate, and this was one of my friends' books for me to annotate. So this was one of the few physical books that I actually read this month. So this is about 2 teen boys who get notified that it is their last day to live. So make the most of it. Live today to the fullest extent. And they end up becoming friends through this app where people who it's their last day connect and live their best lives together, I guess. So I enjoyed this story. I liked that it was about friendship and finding love. I loved that it was about living your best life and taking advantage of the moments that you can. I thought it was a very reflective story, and it allowed me to think about what I would want to do in my final moments. And to be quite honest, because I'm a morbid bitch, I really liked the system of getting a call where it's like, sometime within the next 24 hours, you're going to die. So live in the moment while you can. I kind of like that scenario, you know? I would really like to know when my last day is going to be. But that's just me. I did think this story had a few pointless POVs that could have done without it. And the ending was kind of anticlimactic. I mean, the title tells you what's going to happen, but I was expecting a little bit more detail into what happened. Because I guess I'm morbid like that. I wanted to know how they died. It was a good one. I would recommend it. It's just not something that I would reread. I then had 4 3-star reads. One of them I mentioned earlier being Mistletoe Another one is That Dark Infinity by Kate Pentecost. I listened to the audiobook of this for free through Hoopla. This is a YA fantasy about a monster hunter who has been cursed into immortality, and he is looking for a way to end his curse. And he comes upon this girl who has been brutally assaulted, and she may be the key to ending this curse. So they team up. He is going to help her seek revenge on the people who assaulted her, and she is going to help him break his curse, and in doing so, they end up falling in love. I thought this was a unique story. I really liked the male main character in this. He was a very cinnamon roll character. I liked that the romance in here was very backseat to the plot of the story, and it was built on a foundation of friendship. I liked the first half of this book much more than the latter half. I felt like toward the latter half of the book, there were so many things going on in this story that I feel like the author just threw things into the story to make it more action-packed, and it got confusing at times of what was going on and what was the purpose of all this going on. And there were revelations thrown in that there was just too much going on. So while it was a unique story and I enjoyed the first half of it, it ended up being a pretty forgettable book. This is one that I literally had to go back and I had to read the synopsis for it to remember what it was about and what I enjoyed about it. Another 3-star was Freak Show by Crystal Ash, which is a contemporary romance. So in this, we are following a young woman who is living on the run. She's pretty much homeless, and she ends up seeking a home in this traveling carnival because she's always liked carnivals. So she feels like if she can become a performer in this carnival, it's a way for her to have a home while also getting money. But what she doesn't expect is to be assaulted and taken advantage of by the very creepy men within this carnival. But she has to balance it out of, do I want a home and money, or do I want to be homeless? And she ends up staying with this carnival, and she ends up getting the protection of one of her fellow castmates, I guess, who is a man with a lot of PTSD and mental health trauma, but he ends up protecting her, and they end up forming a romance. I liked the carnival setting of this. I liked the disability and mental health rep through PTSD and an amputee representation. And I liked that this girl, even though she had a lot of trouble within her life, she was still a very kind-hearted person. And she tried to treat others the way anybody would want to be treated. I was kind of disappointed in this though, because I thought it was going to be a paranormal romance, because in the beginning we are introduced to this family of like wolf shifters. I thought they were anyway. And I thought that she was actually going to end up being like a wolf shifter herself. Now, it may happen within the rest of the series that I'm not going to read, but in this first book, it's not. It's just sort of shown up in a prologue, and then this family ends up needing to be saved within this carnival, and she and this guy she's with end up saving them. And that's pretty much all we ever see of that. I also thought their rescue mission happened really quickly, really easily. Absolutely nothing came in their way of helping this family escape. So that was kind of disappointing. And while I was intrigued by the story, I felt like it ended in a place that was good enough to be a standalone. And then I went and looked and found out this is like an 8 or 9 book series. And I'm sorry, I am just not going to invest myself in an 8 or 9 book series of something that was mildly disappointing. And my last 3-star read was The Daughters of Izdahar by Hadir Elsboy. I think I said that name right. I probably screwed it up. But this was an audiobook I listened to. I got this free through Libby as well. And this is a book that I read in anticipation of going to Egypt as well, because it is inspired by modern Egyptian history. So in this, we are following 2 girls from very different backgrounds who have elemental powers, but they both have this common goal of wanting people with powers, especially women with powers, to have equal rights within this society. So that is where the inspiration of modern Egyptian history comes in, is that these women are fighting for the rights of women within this fantasy world. So this is one, again, that I literally had to go back and read the synopsis and write down what I liked and didn't like about it, because I completely forgot about this book. I did like that the female main characters had more in common than they thought they did, and by the end of it, they had like this tenuous friendship. I liked the audio narration of this audiobook, apparently, even though I can't remember it. And I also liked that included elemental magic, which is actually something that I did remember about this. I believe one of the girls has water power and the other one has fire power, if I'm not mistaken. That being said, it was obviously a forgettable story. I thought one of the main female characters was very spoiled and she got on my nerves a lot. And it just ends abruptly. I do know there is a sequel in this. I think this is a duology. It might be a series. I don't know. But it just ends in a weird place and I don't care to finish it. So those were the books that I read in November. Now let's move on to my small haul and unhaul. So I did end up hauling 3 books that I purchased while I was in Egypt. If you saw my Come Book Shopping With Me vlog, which I will link down in the description, I think it was yesterday's Bookmas video, you will have gotten a sneak peek of these. But I ended up picking out The Girl with Braided Hair, which is a fiction novel that was translated into English. It is by an Egyptian author. I then picked up Time Cat, which is a middle grade time travel story about a cat. And I picked up The Egyptian Book of the Dead. I also hauled Fire in the Sky by Sophie Jordan. This is a fairy loot book. There's the spine. Naked hardcover. Reversible dust jacket. And paper art. This will be the last fantasy romance fairy loot edition I received because I did cancel my Fanro subscription. I canceled it in exchange for the YA subscription because I haven't really enjoyed and or liked any of the fantasy romance picks from Fairy Loot. I think I got maybe 4 and then I skipped the rest. So there's no sense in me keeping a subscription where I'm not enjoying the books or I'm skipping so many of them. And we'll see if I get along with the young adult subscription any better. I then stopped into Barnes & Noble in November to take a little peek around and I found a couple books. So I hauled Blood Guard, which is a Red Tower book with these delightful stenciled edges. And it does have some end paper art. So this is one that I have been curious about because I do believe it's from a male perspective and it's fantasy romance, which is something that I want more of. I want to read more fantasy romance from the male's perspective. So I'm hoping that I enjoy this one. And then I hauled Spectacular, which is a Caravel novella by Stephanie Garber. This one has, oh my gosh, look at these beautiful end papers. It's got a freaking colored map, which is one of my favorite things ever. And it's got illustrations in it. So I have not read this yet. I am looking forward to reading it. I do love the Caravel series, so I'm hoping I can get this short one read sometime before Christmas. So those are all the books I hauled in November. Here is the total that I spent on physical books in November. Now for a very quick unhaul, it's just going to be 2 of the books that I read this month. I'm going to unhaul Freak Show by Crystal Ash, and I'm going to unhaul That Dark Infinity by Kate Pentecost. So if you are interested in either of these, I will have them listed on my Pango. My Pango is always linked in the description of this video if you want to check out books that I have for sale. Let me know down in the comments what was your favorite book of November. But if you don't want to comment that but would like to let me know that you made it to the end of this video, could you leave me a wreath emoji? Is there a wreath emoji? If there's not a wreath, leave me a tree. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and until my next Bookmas video, good luck on your December reading plans. Bye!